what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football, and welcome back to your Wednesday night live stream. This is the Hump Day edition of your live stream. We appreciate you guys joining us. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers, pleased to be joined by fellow lifetime Longhorn young prodigy CJ Vogel, and also the newest member of the On Texas Football family, my esteemed colleague and good friend, my man Jeff Howe, joining us as well. What's up, CB, and what's up to each and every one of you out there? Appreciate you guys. You can drive the show any direction you want to. Throw out questions, throw out your comments. You know, we like to address questions and comments. We'll try to address as many of them as we can. But if you want to make sure that your point, your question, your comment is prioritized, then just throw a super chat on it. And super chats always interrupt the show. You can jump to the front of the line at any time. We appreciate you guys doing that. Also, we got some topics that we'll bring up. Of course, recruiting is top of mind for a lot of Longhorn fans out there. So we'll talk about recruiting. Hopefully, it is a big week for the Longhorns on the recruiting trail. We'll get into that coming up here in just a moment. But there are Heisman odds out there that we need to discuss. There are some hot takes from Paul Feinbaum and some others about Texas football that we'll get into as well. College Pro Football Focus's college football arm. They are ranking the top 50 players in college football, and I believe now they've ranked 50 through 21. And there are 3 Longhorns, if I'm not mistaken, that are been ranked so far. So we'll talk about that too coming up on the show and dive into it. Also, I got a question for the panel that we'll talk about that'll probably have us recollecting and hearkening back to some older days on the 40 acres. So we got plenty of stuff to discuss on the show. But first, let's talk recruiting, because I know that is the number one topic on Longhorn fans' minds. And right now, CJ and Jeff, both you guys, I mean, I know that both of you obviously following the recruiting trail right now very closely for the Longhorns. CJ, the rest of this week could be, I don't know if it's going to make or break, but it definitely is going to be a big week for Longhorn fans because they are hoping that the Longhorns are actually going to win a couple of these recruiting battles coming up this week.
Hopefully they win a recruiting battle. Am I right? But no, there should be some good news later on in the week. Of course, Kosi Okpala, the linebacker out of Mady Creek out in Houston, decides tomorrow, the 4th of July on Friday. Whew. That should be filled with a lot of fireworks, right? But John Turntine and Felix Ojo both deciding on Friday. And look, I know that there's been some conversation about Ojo and whether or not, he's dead set on Texas. Will he and John Turntine end up committing to the same school? We'll have to wait and see. Right now, I've yet to hear anything that leads me to think Ojo is fading from Texas, and I still am of the belief that John Turntine is in the direction of the Texas Longhorns. Of course, we've seen crazier things happen over a 48-hour stretch, and that's recruiting. So we'll see. Again, I don't think Ojo is a guy that enjoys going all the way out to Ohio State, and I say that, and this might sound a little crazy, but I could see him at Utah. And I know he made that last-minute trip out to Utah June 20th for his official visit to the Utes. I'm not to say that that's the place for him, but I could certainly see Utah starting to make some headways in that one. Of course, they ended up getting I believe the number 9 or number 15 overall prospect in the country just not too long ago to play tackle as well. But Ojo's still high on their board. But right now, the way that I'm looking at it at the moment, Texas over the next 2 days should finally start getting some gas back in this tank, right? They should be hitting the road for the rest of July and starting to rack up some of these commitments for the 26 cycle.
Man, my whole thing going into the week was, especially knowing coming off of this last cycle where, and not that I have a problem with how Kyle Flood's recruiting offensive linemen at all, but you missed out on Michael Fasusi. You missed on Lamont Rogers, and the Ty Haywood recruitment was its own ball of wax. But you had some really good in-state offensive tackles last year, and you came up empty. You needed to come away with one this year, and really throwing Malachi Lee in there as an out-of-state guy. I felt like of those 3, with Malachi Lee, John Turntine, and Felix Ojo, Texas needed to come out with 1. I feel really good that they're going to come out with 1. If you come out with 2, then you're golden. I mean, you're really sitting pretty if you come away with 2.
Make it up for last year, like you said, last recruiting cycle with those offensive linemen. All right, so we'll get into it a little bit more. And we got a super chat here, though, from Juan. Says, at CJ, Jordan, he says, Jordan Scruggs is saying that Braden Rouse is trending Texas. Thoughts?
Look, I don't know if that's – I don't think that one's necessarily Texas in the pole position. Not yet, at least. Again, that decision's coming up in the middle of July. Tennessee's been the heavy favorite. And we've talked about it with John Turntine in terms of – he's most familiar at Texas. His family's been to Texas the most. He's made it to Texas the most. Those relationships and just familiarity with a specific school, that lasts a long time. And that's Tennessee for Braden Rouse right now. Now, Texas had a great official visit in the month of June, but he's only been to Austin twice. Now, I think Braden Rouse would be a perfect fit at Texas, and I think Texas is looking at him as perhaps a perfect fit for Leon Glafau when he moves on from his career at Texas. But ultimately, are those two visits enough to not just get him on board, but get the family on board? Because I know that getting the dad on board is something that Jerry Hamilton mentioned earlier on TexasFootball.com this morning. If you're able to win the family over, you got a chance. Until that happens, and that might not happen, to be honest, but I think Texas is fighting. They're close in this one, but Tennessee, for me, is still that top dog in that recruitment.
Yeah, I'll just push the Braden Rouse situation aside for a second. I'll go back to something we've talked about on the channel this week that I think is going to ring true starting tomorrow. We actually saw a little bit today. The biggest thing about missing on Kendall Graville, like, yeah, you got 3 interior defensive linemen committed in this class. Like, I don't think Kenny Baker's mad at the class he's got right now. But you were the clear leader for Kendall Graville. And whether it was just Florida's big NIL push, well, whatever the case was, this is a guy that you had the lead for a while that you couldn't quite get across the finish line. Now, Texas is going to recruit him through the whistle. There's no doubt about that. But, CJ, we talked about this. Getting across the finish line, some of these recruitments where Texas has been the perceived leader. John Turntine's one of those. But tomorrow, Kosi Akpala, when he makes his decision, the linebacker at Katy Matey Creek, that's one that for kind of the bleeding to stop a little bit with some of the recruiting losses Texas had, that's one that you'd like to see Texas get across the finish line, not just because he's a really talented player and he fits kind of the multi-positional aspect of the defense Sark is going for now, but this is one where you've been perceived to be the leader for a while now. Go ahead and get it across the finish line so you can not forget outside. I think internally you need to feel like, all right, we can still trust this process if you're Sark and the staff.
Yeah, it's like a guy at the plate who's not found a way to first base in quite a while, and then he just kind of hits a bloop single, and he beats it out, and you're standing there just saying, I'll take it. Any way I can get on base, I'll take it. It's been a long road. Maybe this is the sign of some harder contact or some bigger wins, some doubles, some home runs hitting coming up. So we'll see, of course, but right now I think the next couple of days will be friendly to the Longhorns, and again, it's been interesting this cycle because Texas, to your point, Jeff, they've been atop of recruitments that have gone elsewhere. They've also not necessarily been as competitive with a few offers. I know for Trenton Henderson, they were probably about 60% of what the winning bid was from LSU, and that decision obviously just went a few hours ago. But for me, it's interesting because you're going to look back and say this was a really good class. It took a long, windy road to get to that point.
Yep, I agree with you. You just don't know how it's going to look. You know it's going to be a good class, though. That's I just don't think you know how it's going to look. I think you can trust Sark and his staff enough at this point to know, all right, it's going to be a good class. It'll be a highly ranked class. How it looks and how that all comes together, when it all comes together, that remains to be seen.
I think the other thing too, Rod, and I think you got to remember this: the schools you're recruiting against, whether it's Florida for Kendall Graville, Georgia for James Johnson, LSU today for Trenton Henderson. There's some of these other programs that haven't had, I know Georgia's been recruiting at a pretty ridiculous clip lately with the run they had in June, but some of those other programs needed a win too. I know Florida had felt like they were close on a couple of guys and missed, so they really needed to, get themselves across the finish line with Kendall Graville and hold off Texas. But that's the kind of deal when you're running up against, I know we can get in the house settlement and is stuff going to happen under the table with recruiting and what is above board and what is not now. And how did the collectives play into this? But man, the bottom line is we talked about it a lot, but this is high stakes recruiting. These other programs, trust me, Billy Napier and Kirby Smart and Brian Kelly and Josh Heupel, man, they feel the pressure too. Their fans and their boosters and their collectives, they want results too. So I just keep that in mind. Like you're not losing recruits to little sisters of the poor. You're losing some battles to teams that just like you feel they need to do what they need to do every offseason to position themselves to win an SEC championship.
And it ain't over till it's over. Recruit to the whistle, as Jerry always says. All right, we'll get back to some of the questions. Guys, keep the questions coming. I promise you we'll get back to those. Thank you, Juan, for that super chat. We appreciate it. I want to get to some latest Heisman odds just really quickly. If you had some money, I know CJ's a betting man. He likes to throw out a couple of bets before college football season. And I will say that CJ sometimes is really early on a lot of great trends. I want to say last year you were one of the first folks that was on Indiana. You were big on talking about Indiana in the offseason. And I don't even know if you put money on them, but either way, my man CJ will he'll play the odds every now and then. So I don't know what you think about these Heisman odds from Circa Sports, but Brett McMurphy threw them out there. Here are the latest Heisman Trophy odds via Circa Sports. Guys, Arch Manning 5-1, best Heisman odds currently, ahead of Garrett Nussmeier, 8-1, and Cade Klubnik 9-1. Those are the top three best Heisman odds. Drew Allar, he's at 12-1 from Penn State. Jeremiah Smith from Ohio State at 16-1. DJ Lagway at 17-1, and Lenoris Sellers, he's at 19-1. Those are your top Heisman odds via Circa Sports. Where's the smart money, CJ? Where's the smart money?
The smart money is going to be a little bit a ways down this tweet here. Matthew, if you keep going, it's going to sound crazy when I say it, but I think it'll make sense. How about Carson Beck, 25-1 at Miami?
Oh.
And he had a bad year last year. He was really inconsistent a year ago, but he's going to a very quarterback-friendly offense at Miami, and you're in a very good position there with really only Clemson that you have to worry about in the ACC. You could put up some big-time numbers with some friendly wide receivers and a quarterback-friendly offense with a great offensive line in front of you. This is going to be a guy going into year 4. Look, I don't hate 25-1 there. I'll tell you what, I know
like that.
Arrow Kid says not Avery Johnson. Well, look, I had Avery Johnson last year. I was all the way in on the Kansas State hype. I thought that they were going to be the team in the Big 12. They were not. But look, for me, this is actually kind of a funny story. I ran into a staffer from Texas Tech on the road not too long ago this offseason, and we kind of talked. We brought up Avery Johnson, and for whatever reason, he was the topic of conversation. And the Tech coach kind of stopped and he looked at me and goes, I still get nightmares from him from his freshman campaign. Because look, he split time with Will Howard at Kansas State, right? He was that talented. And against Texas Tech, he had 5 rushing touchdowns, and really, I think his third game of true time there for the for the Wildcats. So I'm in on him as well. He's more of a long shot, but it's interesting too because you look at for folks that follow the betting world, Jeff. I know that you monitor it as well. Arch Manning moving from a 7-1 favorite to a 5-1 favorite in the matter of 30 days. Did he? Yeah. He must have just. Were the Vegas, odds makers at the Manning Passing Academy and just said, that's how the ball's supposed to look comparative to the other guys. I don't know how he dropped that much over the last couple of weeks.
I think for me, the two probably best values I see, actually 3. DJ Lagway at 17-1. I could get in on that. Lenoris Sellers at 19-1, but down there 35-1, man. Sam Levitt at Arizona State. Arizona State could have one of those kind of seasons where they win the Big 12. Are they going to be visible enough, though? That's my only concern with Arizona State. But, man, I feel like the safest play for Heisman odds, I don't know how you feel about it, CJ, but I think the safest play to me is Cade Klubnik. Like, if you tell me which of these guys that, like, you can bank on at least being in New York that's going to have a chance, Cade Klubnik to me is the safest bet.
Yeah, I believe what was that? Matt Miller had his way too early 2026 draft. I think he had Cade Klubnik going number 1 overall. So I think he's his top quarterback. I think CJ's real high on him too. Longhorn fans got a chance to see him up close and personal. Man, he's a dude. He got that dog in him. That's a young folks say. But getting back to this though, at Arch at 5-1 with the best Heisman odds, as CJ said, that his odds have gotten better in the last couple of months or so. The Arch hype, guys. I mean, Paul Feinbaum. I'll read the quote here. I'll just read the quote and let you guys respond to it. He was on ESPN, and his quote about Arch was, I think there's a reasonably good chance that Arch will be sitting on the front row in New York at the Heisman ceremony. That's assuming his team does what it's supposed to and competes not only for the SEC, but for the national championship. And I really believe they will. And he goes on to say, I also believe that Arch Manning is the best college football quarterback we have seen since Tim Tebow entered the scene in 2006.
Okay. Are we just gonna like Cam Newton in 2010 and Joe Burrow in 2019? Those seasons didn't happen.
That didn't exist.
Because I was in the press box at DKR. I saw Joe Burrow with my own eyes. Like, it's hard to forget 3rd and 17. Like I was there. I remember it. Just burning in my brain. Okay, Paul. Okay. CJ's had the best take on this. Like, CJ, I don't want to spoil your thunder, but like, I watched the Cam Newton clip that you retweeted, and I'm like, damn, I didn't think we were gonna get like the most measured, realistic Arch Manning take ever from Cam Newton, but
yeah, we did. Damn
yeah,
right.
We did. Yeah, and some folks started coming at me for this, saying, "What do you mean? He won the Heisman? He's won an NFL MVP." I'm like, "Listen, have you listened to Cam Newton at any point? Give his takes over the last year." But look, I think if anybody can, reasonably stand in the shoes of an Arch Manning and say, "I've been there. I understood what it was like to wait my turn," and then, he didn't stick at Florida, but he ended up sitting, waiting, and then thriving when his time was there. And, I think there's something to that. You could probably listen to something very similar from a Joe Burrow saying, yeah, I needed 2 or 3 for Joe Burrow's sake. I think it was 4 years of not playing before he got on the field. And obviously you just mentioned it. His season is up there with the all-time best. I'm not saying Arch will do that this year, but it's sometimes there's more value in learning from the sideline than being thrown in the fire like a Jackson Arnold was a year ago, and then just having all confidence completely vanish from your soul, right? And that's something I think that is lost a lot when it comes to quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes didn't start his rookie campaign, and look what he turned into. Again, I'm not saying this is the foolproof plan, but I do think there is a lot of value of being able to come in, sit for a year or two, and then being able to take your lumps and bruises behind the scenes and come in whenever your time is right. And for Cam to say that about Arch, look, I wasn't expected that to roll across my timeline today and me just go, oh, that was spot on. But that's essentially what it was.
I think sometimes we forget the slow burn that it is with quarterbacks. Very, very rarely do you get – I know I saw my guy Chris Hummer had a list over at CBS about with I think it was the top 25 true freshman seasons since 2000.
Yeah.
And I got a bone to pick with Chris because how Adrian Peterson isn't number one, I don't know, but I digress. We can get to that later. But very rarely do you get a guy like Trevor Lawrence that steps in as a true freshman and can take you to a national championship. But there's 2 things in that. Trevor Lawrence like legitimately fits the criteria of a generational talent, and that Clemson team he stepped into quarterback was insanely freaking talented. Yeah, like it was ridiculously talented. So we forget the slow burn. Like I was in the boat last year, CJ. I don't know where you were on this last year, but I was in the boat of people last year, especially after that Georgia game. Like, where does Cade Klubnik go from here? Like, does he need to transfer to get, just to change of scenery, just to reset? And here we are now. We're talking about him. A year ago, I was wondering if Cade Klubnik had a future in college football. Now I'm sitting here saying he's the safest Heisman pick of all the guys on the board. So we forget that it's a slow burn with quarterbacks. Man, it's some guys it takes time. And, man, that's a credit to Garrett Riley and Dabo for investing in Cade Klubnik and pouring into him and developing him now boom, you got a franchise quarterback. So yeah, there is value to you get that nature versus nurture argument. And there's plenty of stuff on both sides of the debate to say, yeah, you should do it this way or do it this way. But man, sometimes you just got to give quarterbacks some time.
Yeah. And, hey, looking back at Trevor Lawrence too, I mean, it was Kelly Bryant who started the first half of that season. And Clemson said, hey, you know what? We've seen enough. And we're going to trust the guy that is generational. And I know that's where some Texas fans probably look at that Quinn Arch situation a year ago and say, hey, what about that? And it was like, well, you still made the college football semifinal. You are a yard away from tying a game and potentially playing for a national championship. So it's not like you were a 6-6 team, like Clemson was kind of on path to being that year. You were still pretty darn good.
Yeah. To your point you made earlier, Jeff, about well, really, CJ, you started making, you elaborated on it, Jeff, about quarterbacks just taking a little bit more time, right? And Cam Newton, I think, made a very, just a very profound argument about why it's a good thing that Arch Manning has sat, and that's become somehow, I think, a critique of and a criticism of Arch and of Sark, that he should have played him earlier if he was better than Quinn. We've heard that from a couple of folks, Steve Spurrier being the latest. But quarterbacks, I think now one of the things we're realizing, to your point about quarterback development and how it takes a while, in the NFL, you're starting to see these very circuitous routes to guys becoming franchise quarterbacks now, right? The Baker Mayfields, like you never saw that happen for quarterbacks, right? Where Jared Goff, I guess, is also kind of in that discussion too. Geno Smith is thrown in that discussion. Sam Darnold, yeah, like where you're like, oh, they gave up on this guy, and it's like, actually, no, he just needed to be in a better system. Maybe just needed a little bit more time. And I do think now there is a little bit more grace, I should say, with quarterbacks that, hey, let's give them some time. The NFL still is not a developmental league, but there are some smart quarterback developers, nurturers, quarterback whisperers who are starting to figure out, no, this guy had a really high upside. They just need to be refined. They need to be, kind of nurtured a little bit more, to your nature versus nurture argument. And then in the right system, they can thrive. And you're starting to see that at the NFL level. And I think in college, you see it too for the transfer portal all the time. It's like, oh, no, that guy was all right. He wasn't a bad quarterback. He just needed to be in a better system. And they needed to, build around his strengths and that kind of thing. So I'm with you about, I totally agree about Arch. And I remember that's the comment from Sark on the Greg McElroy podcast, Always College Football. And he said, I don't think there could have been a better situation for Arch now to be put into the starting role. And I think he meant by not only having earned the job and earned the respect of his teammates from sitting and people saying him being an unselfish teammate, but also, being a guy that studied the system for 2 years and got a chance to sit and take a lot of mental reps and watch the mistakes of, someone in front of him, a guy with more experience and a veteran in Quinn Ewers, and that, he's now not rushed and thrust into that role. He's been able to kind of mature into that role. And I think that's actually going to help him thrive. Where a lot of quarterbacks, a lot of those rookie mistakes and the growing pains we expect from first-year starters, I don't know if we see as many from Arch. You're going to see them, but I don't know if you see as many from Arch.
I mean, if you go back to and look at kind of with the exception of Colts redshirt freshman year, really the Colts sophomore year, I think he was 22 touchdowns, 17 interceptions. Vince Young made a lot of mistakes in 03 and 04. Guys, we remember sometimes just what a dumpster fire the 2017 Texas offense. It wasn't like that game against Texas Tech, the regular season finale, where Sam just flat wasn't good. It's probably the worst game he played during his tenure at Texas, to the point where he didn't start the bowl game. Shane Buechele started the bowl game that year. So even the best guys we've seen at Texas, they didn't. We can go revision. You can go revisionist history on some of those guys if you want, but it wasn't like they all just came in to play quarterback at Texas and just started this record-setting career and were flawless. Like, no, there were plenty of bumps in the road, and with all three of those guys, there were times where it felt like, man, maybe they hit some potholes along the way.
Oh man, V1 was about to leave.
Yeah.
If V1 tells the story of him literally thinking about leaving and transferring, the road to H-Town, he talked to Steve McNair. talked him out of it, like go back to school, and then they worked it out, and then the rest is history. So, oh yeah, it wasn't a perfect golden brick road, if you will, to him becoming a Longhorn legend. There was some pitfalls, and there was some obstacles, but that's part of the story. That's why it's a great story. All right, let's get. Oh, you know what? I want to get to our sponsor first, or one of our sponsors, before we get back to some of the questions. Let's thank our friends over at Flat Creek Estate Winery before we move on. Thank you to our friends at Flat Creek Estate Winery, flatcreekestate.com. You can go check out all of their great wines there, but I would encourage you to go check out the venue as well. And not only do they produce some of the best premium wines on the market, but also they have a gorgeous venue with barbecues, wine tastings every single weekend, perfect for a day date with your significant other or a weekend getaway with your significant other. That's Flat Creek Estate Winery, just minutes from downtown Austin, and they've won award after award for their vintage wine, Super Texan. I've been telling you guys about it, and recently they entered into the San Francisco Wine Festival, and it won. Actually, got a 98 out of 100. So Super Texan named the top red blend in the country at that festival, which means they can not only say that it's the best red blend in the great state of Texas, it may be the best red blend in the great country of the US of A, folks. So check it out at flatcreekestate.com. Also, they have it available at HEB. They also have it at your local Specs. They also, I saw it at our local Central Market here as well. Not only is the Super Texan great, but they also have a rosé that's really refreshing. The Pinot Grigio is really good too. So thank you to our friends over at Flat Creek Estate Winery, flatcreekestate.com. All right, let's get back to, we got a couple of super chats here. Isaiah, thank you for the super chat, says, are we done recruiting Xavier Griffin? And where are we with Jalen Lott at this moment in time? Thank you, Isaiah. We appreciate the super chat.
These will be a little bit more fun, I guess. Xavier Griffin is going to be tough. That's going to be a tough one to flip. Texas was in on that one. They're still pursuing Tyler Atkinson, which you're not going to land both. Two highly coveted linebackers from the state of Georgia. It's very unlikely that you see either or both at one certain school. Texas, obviously, very much in the mix for Tyler Atkinson. Getting the family on board for Xavier Griffin might be near impossible. And I say that because at one point, obviously, he was committed to USC, and there was a quote after he recently committed to Alabama where she was on a trip with Xavier Griffin saying, I was recruiting for Alabama on the trip to USC. And when you hear that, you know things are going to be very, very difficult to pry open from that verbal pledge. You got to get mom on board, and if you don't, well, you basically don't have a chance. So very slim chance for Xavier Griffin in my eyes. And for Jalen Lott, look, Jerry did a great job on that one. Mentioning Texas is rising right now for Jalen Lott. They're still a ways away in my eyes in terms of what USC is offering and what Oregon has put on the table as well. Does that mean that Texas doesn't have a chance? No, we've seen Texas in this cycle already win players, win recruitments by not having the highest offer on the table. However, when you're dealing with USC, who was up to 31 commits in the class, and in Oregon, who has played this game for years, it makes things a little bit more difficult, especially when you factor in the track side for Lott, and if that is a possibility at the next level. But Xavier Griffin, they'll recruit through. I don't see a much of an opportunity there. And then, of course, Lott, they're trying their hardest before the July 8th decision date.
When we get into the fall, maybe this is something, maybe it's nothing. But I do wonder how July being a dead period, once you've had your June official visits, there's going to be some decisions made. Since you can't be out on the road doing anything, I wonder how the staff resets and if it changes from any of the kind of strategy we've seen from Sark the last few cycles, where they really get to get in-house and look at the board. They don't have, the pool party or any kind of under the lights camp or anything like that this month. It's dead, and then they'll go right into camp at the end of the month. I wonder if the strategy changes at all. And you got the new rules to still figure out and work around. So I don't know, guys. Maybe the dead period is something, maybe it's nothing, but I do wonder if it really kind of, for lack of a better term, man, the staff really get that bunker mentality and figure out, okay, who do we really want to pursue, and what positions do we need to go back to the board and maybe start getting on guys for senior evals, particularly in-state guys.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Jeff, because look, it was about this week a year ago when Josiah Sharma surprised a lot of folks committing to Oregon. And then at that pool party in the last weekend of July, he makes a visit to campus and flips immediately. Texas won't have that opportunity without the pool party, with the entire month of July being a dead period. But they will have opportunities to get guys committed elsewhere on campus for games in the 25 season. To your point, I think all Texas fans are sitting there saying, I'm hoping each day these coaches are coming in, going to their war room and kind of getting at the blueprint of how to get back into some of these commitments that went elsewhere. And, of course, getting the fine tooth out and going through what is now a pretty lengthy world of NIL and saying, all right, how can we take advantage of this to the highest level within the rules?
To that point, Tennessee Longhorn makes a good point here in the chat. He says, my only problem is nobody acknowledges it's the first recruiting cycle with these rules, so you can't rely on the past, and you can't crap on the staff yet either, still figuring out the new landscape. The reality is it's a new landscape. I'm almost sure they'll find a loophole or something by December. They have to. That's a valid point. I agree.
Yeah.
The rules are constantly changing too, with obviously the House settlement. And now I think you're right about the loopholes. I'm sure there are lawyers, they have really smart folks trying to figure out what way Texas can get an advantage in the new landscape. But every major university is doing that, by the way. That's just not a Texas thing. I'm sure some, by the way, have probably already found out and figured out what these loopholes are. That could be possible. And maybe some don't care.
Yeah. I think that's part of it, Rod. The other part to me is if you are violating the quote unquote rules, who's going to enforce it? Who's going to enforce it? Is the NCAA going to enforce it? You've had two entities that I know Gen Pop really probably doesn't trust. You've had the Supreme Court and Congress both look at the NCAA and be like, you are so much of an S show, even we can't support you or defend you or help you in any way, shape, or form. You're on your own, NCAA. So the NCAA is a lost cause at this point. So that's kind of my thing. Like, I just – if somebody is violating the rules, like if you wanted to turn a school in, like who do you even tell at this point that matters?
Yeah. The one thing I'll add is, look, I understand the frustration because, yes, Texas staff, none of the staffs have truly understood or at least maybe grasped what this ever-changing landscape of college recruiting is. And for Texas, it's been a bumpy road. There's no denying. And I think where the frustration stems from is you look over at Alabama with 4 or 5 stars in the class already. You look at a Georgia who added, 17 recruits in the last 30 days, and you're saying, well, if they're able to win these big recruitments that everybody's in and Texas was after, why can't Texas? And I think we'll eventually see what we've seen every single cycle where November and December, the commitment train really fills up and you start to see this class really start to load up on some big-time guys nationwide. So we'll see, but I understand the frustration, but there's absolutely a point to, the loopholes have yet to really been picked over so far.
I do think this, though, if you go back to when NIL first became a thing in 2021, if you go back to that, remember Texas didn't come out of the gate swinging on NIL. It took some time to figure out. One of the first deals I remember was Roshan Johnson was trying to get some merch printed and couldn't get any kind of like Texas or any kind of, there was certain wording, certain color shade of burnt orange he couldn't use because the school had that trademark. Now everybody went in, it was like, okay, we got to relax the rules a little bit. They figured it out. And I think Texas will figure it out. And the thing you got to remember too, especially with CDC and Kevin Eltife, you've got an administration that when they went all in on going to the SEC, they knew what the deal was. I used to say this right. When we were going through that lost decade, I'd heard this from a couple people kind of at the administrative level. And it was like, look, Texas is trying to be Stanford Monday through Friday. And then they want to be Alabama on Saturday. And you can't do that. You got to be one or the other. And with CDC and Kevin Eltife and President Hartzell at the time, they decided, you know what? We like where we are as an academic institution. That's not going away. Let's go try to be Alabama. Let's go try to do that. And going to the SEC and getting Texas one fun start, all that. Bottom line is they figured it out, and you've got an administration that is going to help this coaching staff, this athletic department. They're going to get it figured out. If there are loopholes to be exploited, they will be found at some point, and Texas will do what they need to do to get the recruits they need to get.
How about this question from John? He says, well, why are Texas fans upset at Sark not throwing bags of cash in July at kids that are easily switched? Get the guys that want to be at Texas and negotiate the others late with the hard sell. Great point there, John. I have said it because Sark has hinted at it several times. I try to listen to every damn interview Sark does. And he's hinted several times that they are not going to lead with the money. And they don't want players who just are leading with the money. Like the guys who are straight up just saying, listen, you got the highest dollar will win. The highest dollar NIL offer will win. That's who gets me.
Right.
And he hasn't just flat out said that, but he's hinted at it several times. And that's part of their overall evaluation. Yes, NIL, everybody, he wants guys to be paid what they're worth. And there's no doubt Texas is competitive in NIL. But he has stated that he doesn't want to lead with that because he believes that's part of bringing in guys who are compatible with the culture. And that they've been very meticulous in that. And that they've always, that's been the way that they have built the roster with that as a data point to consider. So, some people don't like that, but you can't complain about that and then say how much you love the culture, because that, from what Sark is saying, is kind of part of how he has built the culture. We always say you want guys. There are two types of Texas football players, probably two types of Texas players, period. Guys who come to play for Texas and guys who come to play at Texas. And you want guys who come to play for Texas because they're trying to help the program, leave it better than they found it. Guys who want to play at Texas, that's a different breed. All they care about is what the program can do for them, not what they can do for the program. And he's trying to get the for Texas guys and avoid the at Texas guys. And when he got here, it was way too many at Texas guys. So that's his way. And like I said, it does mean that, yeah, there's some guys who are like, nah, man, top dollar figure wins. And I can't get mad at those players either. Because they are, this is generational money and generational wealth they're talking about here. Top dollar figure wins. I'm not mad at them. So I don't hate the player. I don't hate the player or the game. All right. Not mad either on, but from what I can gather, I think Sark is building the right way. And that's why it's tough these days to have a very constructive culture like he has in the day and age of transfer portal, in the day and age of, NIL. We applaud the retention rates of Texas, right? This is part of it on the back end because you got the guys who are there for the right reasons. You want to keep quarterbacks around, you got to pay them, of course, but also the guys, they want to be there. They're the most coveted asset in college sports, right? College football right now. Texas got quarterbacks that can go play elsewhere and get paid to do it, but they want to be at Texas. Malik Murphy he left kicking and screaming. Man, I want to be at Texas so bad. I wish I could stay at Texas. And it was like, okay, how many times you gonna say it, Malik? You start bragging about your team you're gonna play for next. You kept talking about how great it was at Texas. That's part of the culture. So I understand the frustration. I do. I get it. And maybe they need to find a better balance to the point you guys are talking about. And maybe there needs to be a better balance struck. I agree with Jeff. They will figure that out. They've proven they will solve problems. But man, let's give the man credit because it's really hard to have that type of culture in this day and age. And Sark has been able to bring it to, bring it to reality on the 40 acres. And a part of it is how the guys he brings in for the right reasons.
If you want to know why when Charlie Strong got to Texas and Tom Herman got to Texas and Sark got to Texas, why there were roster overhauls and the cry for a culture change, it's because the previous coach, whoever it was, whether it was late Mac Brown or Charlie or Tom, the previous coach had gotten in a win now mode. And what do you do when you get in win now mode? You cut a lot of corners and you convince yourself, you know what? This guy's got a lot of red flags, but he's so damn talented. Yeah, we'll go take Desmond Harrison, an NFL left tackle. Like there are countless red flags, but you'll take them. And it ends up being a problem for the next guy. And I think at this point, if you want to just money whip guys, if you don't know what that looks like, go look at Texas A&M's roster under Jimbo Fisher. Go look at USC right now under Lincoln Riley. That's what happens when you just start trying to money whip your problems. the Texas roster right now is one that's been built by Sark and the staff. They haven't cut any corners. And that's another reason, to Rod's point, why the culture is so good. Because the guys you're bringing in, either they adapt to the culture or they're not going to be here very long. Or it's made clear to those guys, hey, you're probably not a fit here. And at the end of the day, roster retention, as much as we talk about recruiting, trust me, it is extremely important. I'm not brushing it aside like it's not. But in this day and age of college football, man, roster retention is every bit as important as what you're doing with your incoming recruiting class.
Yep. Totally agree. All right. Let's get back to another question here. Derek says, is this Sark and Company's hardest recruiting year?
I don't think so. I think it was that first full cycle with the 22 class, because you weren't able to get out on the road. It was a new staff that didn't have time to get on the road, get FaceTime, build any relationships with anybody. You had NIL in the summer that you had to try to get a handle on. And plus, I mean, let's think about it. If Mario Cristobal doesn't leave for Miami, do you get Kelvin Banks or Cam Williams?
Probably not. Probably not.
You know, so I mean, I think that first full cycle, and you're having to sell your program in the middle of a 5-7 season when you lost to Kansas.
Yeah. That's bad.
It absolutely shouldn't be the hardest year for Sark on the road, right? You're going into year 5. You're back off of back-to-back Final Four appearances. You should be in these conversations to win big fish across the entire country, and Texas will. And, you know, again, it's a slow, painful wait until November and December, but that's really where we've seen a good bulk of the action in every single cycle. And I think Texas knows this. I think Sarkisian knows this. I think every coach in the building knows this. They're not going to sit there and say, oh, well, we tried our best. They'll make it work somehow, one way or the other, to make sure they get the guys in the boat that they want, to ensure that they continue to play and have the talent on roster at the level that they've been at over the last few years.
Yeah. I don't trust them at this point.
When Malachi Lee committed to Michigan, Kyle Flood didn't call his family like, well, sorry you didn't pick us. Best of luck, young man. Like, no, they're trust me, they're still going to be in on some guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, hoping for that flipmas later on. All right, let's thank another sponsor before we move on. Let's thank our friends over at Von Lane. We really appreciate them and their ongoing support of On Texas Football and sponsoring our Wednesday night live stream. Listen, we know that all of you all out there have had to travel to and in between the major Texas cities, Houston and Dallas and Fort Worth and San Antonio and Austin. And it's a bit of a toss-up, right? Do you deal with the airport chaos and hope your flight isn't delayed, or do you brace yourself for hours behind the wheel battling traffic and burning an entire day of productivity? Well, there's a third option, and it's better in each and every way. It's Von Lane. I've taken it several times to Houston. I've taken it to Dallas on business, to visit family. I love the Von Lane. My wife, she's a big fan of the Von Lane, and you will be too. You arrive at a luxury hotel terminal, no TSA lines, no long-term parking lots, just a seamless boarding experience. It takes minutes, not hours. You settle into a plush leather seat, a hot towel, pillow, and blanket are at arm's reach. Your attendant offers complimentary snacks, beverages, and on select trips, you have a full meal if you'd like. And if you need to relax, you can lean back and enjoy the ride. But if you want to stay productive, there's high-speed Wi-Fi and power at every seat. And while you're unplugging or powering through, the Von Lane team will be monitoring traffic in real time, using smarter routes and efficient detours to keep your trip smooth and on schedule. And right now is the perfect time for you to plan your fall travel. Booking is open through September, so whether you're headed to a college football game, like a lot of you will be, or a weekend getaway, or a business trip that needs to be done right, Von Lane makes the journey part of the reward. Von Lane serves Austin, Dallas, Houston, Fort Worth, and San Antonio as well, and in the Southeast, Atlanta, Nashville, and Memphis. Visit vonlane.com. That's VONLANE.com, and use the code OTF25 to save $20 off your first ride with Von Lane. Von Lane, elevated regional bus transportation. Thank you very much to our friends over at Von Lane. All right, a couple of questions, and then we'll dive back into some topics here. How about this one? CJ, for you from T, says, have you heard or seen anything on the numbers for the newcomers, Mosley, injuries, Watson, etc.?
Good question. I have not. Those should be coming out here probably in the next 2, maybe 3 weeks as we get closer to August. I will say the one that I am aware of, at least, is Nick Townsend, freshman tight end out of Decaney. He's rocking number 81. So that's the only one I've been made aware of so far. But other than that, I'll do some digging and see if I can come up with something soon.
Nice. I like that. Thanks for the question. T, how about this one from Jake says, would you guys say that Atkinson is comparable to Hill as a prospect, or are they different? And do you think Wesley would contribute right away like Simmons?
It's a good question. Atkinson is being pitched that Anthony Hill spot. Is he comparable to Hill? Look, I don't think he's as natural as a pass rusher as Anthony Hill is. Rod, you have all the numbers we've heard about it this summer.
Yeah.
Not many people have that innate ability to get after the quarterback spot as an off-ball middle linebacker. But I don't think that necessarily detracts from Tyler Atkinson. Of course, he is a 5-star prospect. He looks perfect when it comes to building a linebacker. So I would say play style minus maybe the pass rush is similar in that instance. This might come off maybe, I don't want to say a shot to either guy, but he's got what I envisioned that Malik Jefferson athleticism was back in the day.
Ooh, okay.
And he's doing that at 6'3.5", maybe. Like, he's a big kid. He looks great. Jeff, you obviously saw a lot more of Malik than I did in person. But to me, Tyler Atkinson has that athletic potential to get to that level in the heart of your defense.
He's Jordan Hicks, but just a tick more higher up on like kind of the NFL type athleticism than Jordan was. And I say
that's pretty good.
I say that knowing that Jordan throughout his NFL career, I mean, look, at some point the injuries add up, right? When we talk about like a torn groin, ruptured Achilles, pec tear, like at some point that starts to add up and detracts a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I think we forget like the Jordan Hicks that first got to Texas was like a legitimate NFL caliber athlete. Like that to me, when I watch Tyler Atkinson, I see more Jordan Hicks than I do Anthony Hill.
Oh, I like that. Either one. I'll take either one, man. I'll take either one of them.
Years now, is that what it is for Jordan?
Oh man,
what's that?
How many Jordan Hill? He's been in.
Yeah, I'm trying to think now.
His rookie year was 15, so I mean he's over a decade in now.
Yeah, 10, 11 years, something like that. That's wild, actually.
And you see, you know, kind of like he was at Texas, just one of those guys that he's not a problem guy. He's a guy that people like having in the locker room. He's a productive player. Man, I guess as long as people are going to give him checks, Rod, he's going to keep playing.
No, I guess that's quite an accomplishment considering he had injuries before he got to the league.
Yeah,
and still has stuck around like that, and been like a contributor, like not a starter. It's not like he just was on a roster. No, man, he was like starting for like more than half of his career. He's been a starter, I believe.
God, that 2016 season, was he playing cornerback? Look at that. 11 passes defended, 5 picks. That's crazy.
That Eagles Super Bowl year, he was starting for them the Super Bowl year, and then I think that was the year he tore his pec. I think.
Dude, that's a nice NFL career. I don't think I've ever looked at his stats like this. Next time I run across him, I want to let him know how awesome of a player he is.
Matthew can remind me. I forget which season the Doug Peterson Eagles Super Bowl was, but it was one of those in there where Jordan Hicks was playing lights out and ended up getting hurt and actually missed the Super Bowl. Still got him a ring though. Him and Marcus Johnson were both on that.
Yeah,
2018. Thank you, man.
And Matthew's still celebrating. Multiple Super Bowls.
Good job. Thank you.
Doug Peterson's been fired by the Eagles and been fired by another team, and Matthew's still celebrating that Super Bowl.
It's because they got Howie Roseman behind the scenes. That's what it really is. That's what it is. You got Howie behind the scenes, man. Building. Howie Roseman understands what one of the eternal truths about the NFL, and I've said this for years. You got a 5-year window. You got a 5-year window, and he'll tear down. And that's why Andy Reid, he was like, Andy Reid, you ain't got there, man. You got in there too many times. You're done. because the 5-year rule is no coach and quarterback have been together longer than 5 years and won a Super Bowl and won their first Super Bowl, like after 5 years. So after 5 years, you might as well just break it all down and start over. And that's why he let Andy Reid go 1-1, right after that with Doug Peterson. Doug Peterson, 5 years. All right, man, you know what? Moving on. Let's hire somebody else. Now you got to with Sirianni. And trust me, Sirianni, he might get fired in 2 years too if Sirianni don't hold to a certain standard. He will reinvent that franchise with a new quarterback or a new head coach around every 5 to 6 years.
That's good to hear. That clock's restarting for Dak, baby.
Yeah, it is.
It is. Yeah, because Mike McCarthy was at what, 6 years? He was right around like
too
6
long.
years. Like that.
Too long.
If you're a GM in the NFL, you got to understand that rule. If your quarterback and your head coach have been together longer than 5 years and they haven't gone to a Super Bowl, they're probably not going to go because the salary cap, everything deteriorates after that. It's hard to pay your veterans. You got to start over anyway. Start building the franchise all over again.
Oh,
Cowboys, exactly. Jerry Jones don't understand that. You got to rebuild it, man. Every 5 years or so.
But it's impressive though, Rod, when you think about Texas guys in the NFL. Jordan Hicks and Quandre Diggs were both in that 2015 draft class. Both still playing. I know Quandre said on the channel a while back that probably he's maybe one more year and then getting ready to call it. But man, the fact that those two guys, thankfully they've both been able to stay healthy long enough, but the fact that both those guys have sustained NFL careers, just knowing the type of football character both guys have, it does surprise me. I know you got to be real fortunate with health, but those guys have the kind of if you're Jordan Hicks, you have to have good football character, as many injuries as he had at Texas to still leave as an All-American and a top 100 draft pick. Like you still had to have some really good football character about you.
Yep, I agree with that. All right, a couple of more questions. David says, what time is Akpala committing?
10 a.m. And
that's early.
We will have boots on the ground out there. Jerry's going to make the trip out to Mady Creek tomorrow. So no coffee and football for Jerry tomorrow. I'll be taking a spot in the early morning. So me, Blake, and Bobby will break down the preview for that commitment. And, of course, Jerry will be there to hopefully see that go the way of the Longhorns. Of course, momentum is at a premium right now. And I think Jerry's taking matters into his own hands by getting out there on the road.
Mm-hmm. I like that one.
DJ, what are you putting in your coffee for coffee and football tomorrow morning?
Red Bull. I actually don't drink coffee, so.
Me neither. I don't drink coffee.
I'm not a coffee guy. So I might be cracking up a little strawberry Red Bull. I'm out at the lake. I'm at roommate's lake right now, so.
Nice.
It'll be nice out in the morning. I'll pop the firework maybe or two here, and we're getting ready for the 4th, man. I'm excited.
You should broadcast outside by the lake then. Get some scenery.
Too many mosquitoes.
Too many mosquitoes.
I got the sweet skin. They like it.
I got the sweet skin. We got to get that one. That's a great quote from TJ right there. How about this one from Jason? Which Texas linebacker had the best NFL career? Has to be DJ, right? We're talking about all time or just recently? Because all time, you got to be like Tommy Nobis.
How are we not going to mention Tommy Nobis?
I say Tommy Nobis is all time, probably. Are we talking about recently? Yeah, DJ was a Pro Bowler. I think he made all pro.
I think if you look at Derrick Johnson and Tommy Nobis, the resumes pretty much play out. I think they're both 5-time Pro Bowlers, and I think both were 2-time All Pros.
Yep.
I hope
4 or 5 Pro Bowls. I forget.
I'm looking it up right now to make sure.
Look, 5 Pro Bowls is a lot to get to, and I'm not saying he would have gotten to that point, but the second ACL tear for DeMarvion Overshown probably limits what type of NFL career he could have had. Because, look, he was really piecing things together late last year before that ACL on Thanksgiving. So it's unfortunate, but fortunately, you start looking 10 years down the road and you got Anthony Hill, perhaps a Trey Moore. You probably have a Brad Spence. What does a Leon Glafauer, Ty Anthony Smith do? You're going to have some big-time names in the league from Texas, and that's been a while since you've had multiple from that linebacking spot.
Yep.
I just wonder – I'm trying to think of who the next Longhorn to get into the Hall of Fame is going to be, because if you just look at on-field accomplishments, Earl Thomas and Justin Tucker should be no-brainers.
Well, Justin Tucker's not going in anytime soon.
And it doesn't look like Earl Thomas is either. So.
Earl Thomas has a better shot just because, first of all, he's not a kicker. They just don't make case for kickers, and he's got, of course, the off the field stuff happening. We know about that. But Earl's off the field issues, I don't know if they are as salacious and scandalous as what Justin Tucker's got going on. His was just kind of a blip. Apparently, there's stuff coming out about Justin Tucker, long time behavior over extended period of time. So I think for Earl Thomas, there may be a little bit more grace. He's not gonna be like, I don't know if he'll be a first ballot. He probably deserves on field wise to be a first ballot. I don't know if that'll happen because of the stuff going on.
No,
I think Earl gets in though. I think Earl gets in.
I think the last round, or I think Earl might have made the semifinalist cut, maybe. But I think if you look at, like Steve McMichael getting in, Rod, I think that to me gives Earl Thomas some hope, because I think when you look at great NFL defenses, and the Legion of Boom is one of those, and when Richard Sherman and Bobby Wagner, like that defense is going to end up having guys that are no doubt Hall of Famers. At some point, people will look at it and be like, you know what? How is Earl Thomas a key piece of this defense and he's not in the Hall of Fame? Like at some point, he's going to get in. I think he has to.
Yeah.
Has to. And I hope his bust in Canton is him riding off on the golf cart in Arizona, of him just greeting his own training staff.
I forgot about that one too. That was classic.
But like the fact that Tommy Nobis isn't in the Hall of Fame is stupid. Like it's just I don't get that. And I know my guy will never make it in, but there needs to be a Pittsburgh sports writer that goes to the table and makes a damn good case for Casey Hampton, because there's one to be made. But Tommy Nobis has got to be in there.
No, Bible says it's about. I agree with you on that. Number one, but Earl Thomas, the case for him is that there was a whole generation of defensive coaches who thought they could play single high coverages and emulate what the Legion of Boom was doing, all because of how freakish the range was for Earl Thomas to be able to get from sideline to sideline and still be able to defend the run from depth, like a beast. I mean, just a natural alley cat. So they were all food, and he was arguably the best single high deep field safety of his generation. I mean, Ed Reed is it obviously that conversation too, but I'm talking about he's kind of after Ed Reed. Earl Thomas is right there, man. I'm telling you.
I agree 100%.
He really was a freak. All right, let's get to I want to get to a topic actually really quick. If you guys have a couple more questions, throw them out there and we'll try to address them. We're going to close up the program pretty soon, so before we do that, I want to get to a couple of other topics. So Pro Football Focus, they're ranking the top 50 players in college football. And we've gone over, I believe, Arch being ranked and Malik Muhammad. They were ranked, I believe, in the 40 through 50 category. And now they're doing, I believe, 30 through 21, somewhere like that. Shout out to my man, Michael Taft, who ends up, thank you very much, Matt. He's probably the best in the business. Look at him. Got Michael Taft as the 26th best player in college football. Former walk-on, gentlemen. Shout out to DBU. What are your thoughts about Michael Taft being? I think he's getting some. Pro Football Focus, by the way, likes Michael Taft. They rank him higher than a lot of different publications who are ranking players, that kind of stuff. Because I think the metrics, the analytics, actually tell you, also translate to him being a really, really good player. In addition to him now getting those accolades. But what are your thoughts? I throw it to you first, Jeff. They got him as the 26th best player in college football. They got him ranked higher than Malik Muhammad.
I think because of his range, but more so his ball skills. We talked for years, Rod, how Texas didn't have, really kind of Earl Thomas was kind of the last one they had that ball hawk in the middle of the field. Mm-hmm. I mean, that is Michael Taft. And, if Texas continues this trend of playing more single high safety, he's perfect for that role because of his range and because of his ball skills, his ability to close on the ball and make plays. And when you look at the safeties he's paired with, he plays really well off of Derek Williams or Jelani McDonald or Andrew Makuba last year. But I think his role defensively, we can talk about the skills and the metrics and all that stuff, but I just think his role as a single high safety where you can just put him over the top and don't have to worry about it. I think that's worth its weight in gold for this defense.
Yeah.
Ooh. Yeah, it's pretty interesting looking at that list. Dylan Tianneman going from Purdue to Oregon this offseason, that was considered one of the larger portal hauls of anybody in the country, just because, look, first-team All-American, but one spot above Michael Taft, who was a second-team All-American. That kind of gives you an idea of how close the talents are in my eyes. It's pretty interesting. I also looking up there saying, I know Texas fans won't like it, but my guy Torian York at 29, who might Texas face on this top 10, or what is it, 21 through 30? Torian York comes to mind. I think it was a bit of a curve year in 2024 for him, but if that defense is going to get to where they need to go, he's going to have to be that focal piece for the Aggie defense this year.
I must be a Garrett Nussmeier homer, because I would have him over Drew Aller and Carson Beck both.
Yeah, I would certainly have him over Drew Aller. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but I was watching some Drew Aller tape the other day, just because I tweeted, like, I don't see it with him. I don't see him elevate his team. I think he's fine. I don't see him as a guy that's going to go first round next year. I don't see him as a guy that's a top 5 Heisman contender coming into the year. And that's okay, right? I didn't really see it with J.J. McCarthy. And you didn't need to be that guy at Michigan. And that's not necessarily his strength when you got a Nick Singleton and a Katron Allen in the backfield with him. But I was watching the Penn State USC game. A couple things.
I know where you're going with this, yeah.
Drew Aller threw 4 picks in that game. I had no clue. I just picked a random Penn State game. He had 3 in the first half, threw 1 late in the fourth, whatever. But Lincoln Riley, there's not a bigger fumble in a single game of the entire year ago than what Lincoln Riley did in that game. It was absurd, Matthew. I put out a quick tweet of this. If you go through my last couple of photos, I had to bring this to light because it made me so irrationally mad as someone who's very quick to call out just time management blunders. They had the ball at the 49 with 1:48 left. They gained 3 yards, wasted 90 seconds, threw a pick on the next play, overtime. They went from 1:48 to 17 seconds left in 2 plays with all 3 timeouts, gained 3 yards, and then lost the game in overtime. They had the ball at midfield with 3 timeouts. Wow. It says 1:36. I swear the ball started at 1:48. It was the worst coaching blunder I've ever seen in my entire life. Just how do you let that happen? How do you let that happen? You run a counter, loses 2 yards. You run a quick curl, you get 5. And then you throw a pick after 90 full seconds.
Wow.
Run off the clock. It was unbelievable. But that's all started for me just wanting to learn a little bit more about Drew Aller. So I'm out on him. I'm out on Lincoln Riley being any sort of clock wizard. He certainly is not. So that's my rant.
Damn. That was a good rant. That was quality. Because you started one place and then you ended up somewhere else. Yeah, that's what rant does. So that was good.
I'm sitting there, it's like, what kind of leap can a Drew Aller take this year? And I was like, wait a minute, Lincoln Riley doesn't know how seconds and clocks work.
Yeah, you know what that is? Man, that needs to be stated a little bit, because at one time, Lincoln Riley, the fall from grace for Lincoln Riley. Oh, yeah. That. I mean, it's been staggering to me. Like, I remember at one time, I mean, the thought was that Lincoln Riley was on his way to being considered an elite coach in college football, like among the top 5 best coaches, if not top 3. He was missing a national title and competing, and he was on his way to getting that. It was like, oh, only a matter of time. And now he seems far removed from that. Now more people talk about him being on the hot seat than being a made man in college football. And his contract says he's a made man. But right now, I don't know. I guess he's recruiting like one right now. I'll say that. But USC has not taken the leap that most people thought under Lincoln.
He's got a leash like he is.
Yeah, he does.
Which might be as dangerous, Rod.
Yeah. He just got to find. I mean, I know he's changing defensive coordinator, so we'll see. But it's still offensively, he's still among the best offensive minds. It's just now we know that he is not a great game manager, to CJ's point, and he's not necessarily great at hiring coaches either. And that's one of the things that we have praised with Sark. Like Sark actually is really good at hiring coaches. Some people, and it's the brisket, Duke says. Some people
that doesn't help. That doesn't help.
But some people have criticized Sark's game management at times too, to be fair. Yeah. So.
Hey, at least Lincoln Riley finally cut the cord with Benny Wiley.
So, that was smart. See, exactly. That was a bad choice too.
The first step of being a guy serious about winning was ditching Alex French, and now he's done it with Benny Wiley. So maybe. Yeah. And I did see where Benny Wiley ended up. I think I sent this to you guys in the chat, but for the folks that don't know, I think he's at a 3A high school out in the sticks of Texas.
Yep. Yeah. Hard. Yeah. Exactly. Good for him. No, it is, but it says that probably was a bad choice for Lincoln Riley for him to hire Benny Wiley. So, all right, let's thank our last sponsor before we end tonight's program. Let's thank our friends over at South Point Dodge. You can score an easy extra point this season when you get to the point with our friends over at South Point Dodge. South Point Dodge has over 600 vehicles in stock right now, folks. 600 vehicles in stock, including that all-new Ram 1500, folks. And trust me, if you get over to southpointdodge.com, not only can you look at one of their 600 vehicles they have, including that all-new 2025 Ram 1500, but they offer right now the employee incentive pricing. That's their fancy way of saying you get the employee discount with our friends over at South Point Dodge. That's right. You pay what the employees pay right now at South Point Dodge. You won't find a better deal than that. That's the real deal today at South Point Dodge. You can go see them in person off of I-35, or you can go online at southpointdodge.com. Whether you need a car, truck, something new, something used, whatever you need, South Point Dodge is Austin's automotive everything. So get over there today at southpointdodge.com. And don't forget about the employee incentive pricing. You play with the employees pay right now at southpointdodge.com. All right, we'll take a couple of more questions. Last one here, or at least second to last one. John says, Rod, do you see Arch being able to elevate the team a little more than Quinn due to being more vocal? That's interesting. I just don't think Quinn was a natural vocal leader. I just don't think that came natural to him. Arch has been, the pedigree, obviously, being a part of the first family of football, their family business is quarterback. Quarterback's a natural leadership position. So ever since, he's been a youngster, I'm sure he has been groomed pretty much to take on and embrace and relish in that role and to have his own style of leadership. With Quinn, I do think Quinn, because it wasn't natural to him to be a vocal leader, it is something that he was uncomfortable with probably early on and then had to kind of find, his comfort level of it, right? I think for Arch, I don't know if there's been, like, we've heard all the stories about them talking trash now, right? Like at practice, and Arch starts it. Arch is the one that starts the trash talking with the defense, and everybody's jawing back and forth. He's adding some juice to practice. Some of you probably wouldn't get from Quinn. Maybe you got it last year. All right. But you didn't get that from Quinn as a second-year starter or his first year as a starter. So I do think for Arch, I do think right now he's probably refined his leadership skill more, fine-tuned it more at this point than Quinn probably was even as a second-year starter or even as a third-year starter. It just wasn't natural to him. And that's okay because you've got different styles of leadership. But I will say that everybody wants a vocal leader at quarterback. You just do. Everybody, everybody pretty much wants a vocal leader at quarterback, somebody who can, give the rah-rah speech if needed, motivate the team. And not saying that Quinn didn't have those great relationships. We saw him. He had the handshakes with the guys and celebrations. We're going to have all that. But there is a certain element of being able to motivate and inspire guys, being able to do it by articulating a point with emotion and with passion, all those things. And you don't want it to be, as Jeff talked about, inauthentic. You don't want it to be something that seems disingenuous because everybody's going to feel that too. It's got, remember, and so you can see, remember that one time where Quinn was getting the team hype. And remember Jadae Barron was like his hype man. Do you remember this? And he was like his hype man with him because I think Jadae Barron he was like, yeah, this is what I'm talking. Yeah, I'm finally. That's what I want you to do. I need you to be up here giving these guys hype. I need you to be giving these speeches. That's what he was doing. He was being a hype man for Quinn because Quinn normally that's not his role. I think Arch will naturally have more of that role and will be more comfortable in it. Period.
Yeah,
I think for Quinn too. Go ahead, CJ.
I was just going to say, I don't want to bring Baker as a comparison, but the way that guys played for him and he kind of just encapsulated the entire personality of a team, that's going to be Arch. Now, he's not going to be grabbing his you-know-what and flipping the you-know-who. That's an Eminem line, by the way. But the point being for Arch is I think you're going to see that personality latch onto the rest of the team. And he mentioned it at the MPA saying, I've got to find ways for my players or my teammates to play for me as a quarterback. Ding, 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 ding. That's what you want to hear from a quarterback.
That's good.
I was going to make a point, but I didn't have old school Eminem lyrics on my bingo card tonight. So
hard to beat that. Hard to beat that. I don't know if you want to follow that. All right. Last question. Here's from Texas Boy Wonder says, what game do y'all think D. Cooper will make his official visit before or after Texas plays the Pound Puppies?
Great question.
Hopefully a night game.
Yeah, hopefully. And again, I don't want to say it's 100% certainly going to happen. He had an opportunity this summer to do it. Didn't want to bump one of the schools that he had obviously had a pre-existing relationship for. Does that mean that Texas is a lock to get him on campus in the season? No, I think it's likely. So we'll see. But Jeff, I'm with you. Let him come in, see the entire charade that is DKR under the lights.
I know Sark likes the early morning kickoffs for recruiting weekends, but you don't want to do that to a recruit and their family, have it be 120 and everybody sweating their tenders off in the stands. Like, let's make it a little more comfortable.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Texas Boy Wonder, and thank all of you guys out there for the questions. We really appreciate it. Thank you guys for the super chats as well. Thanks to Matthew behind the scenes. He's the real MVP, always doing a great job twisting and tweaking the dials. Thank you, CJ. Appreciate all of your expertise. Jeff, thank you for the knowledge. Always a great time. If we missed any of your questions or comments, we apologize for that. Please direct them to the guys at Coffee and Football tomorrow. As CJ mentioned, Jerry's going to be out because he's going to be boots on the ground for the Kosi Akpala announcement down there in H-Town. So you want to see you stick to ontexasfootball.com and On Texas Football, the YouTube platform, because we'll have you up to date on that announcement. CJ's going to be sitting in for him on Coffee and Football starting at 8:15. That Akpala announcement is at 10 o'clock, I believe, CJ. So yes, trust me, we'll be ready to react to that announcement here at On Texas Football. We'll also tomorrow have the winning drive that'll be at 3:15 tomorrow with myself, CJ, and of Coach Bob Shipley will be joining us for that one. So hopefully we'll be talking about a win for the Longhorns on the recruiting trail. But for Jeff and for CJ and for Matthew behind the scenes, I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Appreciate all you guys. Until next time, hook 'em horns.